Hello, everyone. We're very happy to see so many of you come to join our webinar. We're very excited about the new DJI Mavic 3 Enterprise series and look forward to talking with you about it. My name is Greg King, and I'm one of our enterprise account managers here at Multicopter Warehouse. And I'm joined by Ryan Carter, who's my counterpart.
Hello,
Ryan.
everyone. How's it going?
And before we get going on the Mavic 3, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Multicopter for those of you who don't do business with us currently. We're based out of the Denver area. We have enterprise account managers, and we also have DJI service. We're in our offices. We have enterprise account managers available from 7 in the morning until 6 p.m. And our repair techs are here from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And being on the mountain time zone, we're able to ship to both coasts. So we're able to cover the entire country. And for those of you who do business with us, we appreciate it. And for those of you who don't do business with us, we'd love to earn your business in the future. So what we're going to do is talk about the two new Mavic 3 Enterprise drones. And before we start on talking about the M3E and the M3T, one of the things that we felt was important is to let you know where they line up and what drones they have been replacing, because there's been some confusion in the market. So the M3E is replacing the Phantom 4 RTK. So that's a direct replacement for that drone, and the Mavic 4 RTK is still available for a little bit, but that one will be being discontinued. And then another drone that's been out there for quite a while is the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced that a lot of you own. And that drone now is being replaced by the M3T. So now the M3, the Mavic 3 T and E, they're going to be the current drones for both as replacements for those two drones. And then Ryan, if you want to give us a couple of quick stats before we get into more diving in.
Yeah, so kind of a quick overview on both of these systems. We have the dimensions, weight. These systems do not have an IP rating to them like we see with the M300 and M30T series. So my recommendation would be to not fly in any sort of extreme weather. Now, these drones can handle very light mist or very light sprinkle for snow or rain, but outside of that, you really would not want to use this in any kind of extreme weather. And then the different cameras that are going to be on the two different systems are going to be what kind of differentiates these two, with the M3E having just the two wide camera and zoom camera, and the M3T having the wide zoom as well as the thermal camera. So we'll kind of get a little bit more into each of those cameras and what they offer. But this is kind of your quick overview of those systems. Now getting into the M3T, what that one's going to have is it'll offer the 640 by 512 thermal camera. It's going to have a 56 times hybrid zoom. Now the way that these zoom cameras are going to work is they have a main camera, which is going to be a 24 millimeter wide angle, and then that secondary camera is a telephoto lens. So it's right around, I believe, 162 millimeter equivalent for the focal length on that. And you will then essentially zoom between those two cameras and be able to get up to the 56 times hybrid. Now I will note that when you do max out this hybrid zoom, that it will get pretty grainy once you get to that 56 time mark. I would say, anywhere between, 1 times to 40 times, you're going to hold a pretty good resolution. It's just that last little bit when it's really pushing that additional telephoto lens where you'll start to get a little bit of grain. And what we've noticed is, when you're trying to read a license plate or need very specific information when you're at the full zoom, then it becomes a little bit tougher to do compared to what we see with the M30 and the M300 with H20 series. That wide angle camera is going to be a 1/2 inch CMOS sensor, and as well as the zoom camera will also be the same size sensor. Now this aircraft does have a maximum flight time of around 45 minutes, and then the DJI Pilot 2 app is going to be the main app that you'll use for operations. Now for the M3E, what we'll see is a lot larger wide camera. Since this is used for survey mapping primarily, then you do want that bigger sensor to get higher resolution for those 2D, 3D maps and models. And another big difference is the fact that this main camera has mechanical and digital shutter. So as what we saw with the Phantom 4 RTK, which had a mechanical shutter, which was why people, used it so much for mapping to eliminate warp and be able to maximize kind of the speed that you're able to capture the images with. That has now been included on this Mavic 3 Enterprise. So same zoom camera on there with that 56 times hybrid zoom. And then when you do utilize this for survey mapping, you would likely want to add that RTK module, which is compatible with the DRTK2 base station, which is something that we did not see with the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced. The Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced did have the option of adding that RTK module, although it was not something that you could get set up to the base station. So the workflow with that was a little bit more hands-on and complex to kind of get set up, whereas this makes it a lot more user-friendly and easy to kind of get those two connected and execute the missions. Now, kind of comparing these two aircrafts, the new Mavic 3 Enterprise and Mavic 3 Thermal to the old airframe of the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, what we see here is that it is a little bit larger of a footprint. It is a little bit heavier, but because of the build on it, it is able to kind of handle a little bit more extreme wind conditions. It's able to fly a little bit faster. And then the biggest thing here, in my opinion, is going to be the fact that obstacle avoidance is a lot better designed than the Mavic 2 airframe. So the Mavic 2 airframe, it had omnidirectional sensing, so it had 6 directional sensors, forward, backwards, up, down, side to side. The problem with that sideways lateral sensing was that they were pointed directly to the side, where once you're flying in a sideways direction past 18 miles per hour, those automatically turn off because of the fact that the aircraft is so tilted that those sensors are now looking directly at the ground. So the redesign on the airframe with the Mavic 3 was making those sensors a little bit more wider, fish-eyed kind of, where it's going to be able to cover a larger area. And so we see that the sensing speed is right around double for what it can handle for max speed when flying side to side. So in terms of just the avoidance system altogether, I will say it's a lot safer of a system, a lot less likely to have any crashes. And then you see kind of the difference in speed and whatnot on there as well. So,
well, and there's something, and even though these are the M3E and the M3T are the enterprise drones, they are the same frame as the M3, so they do take the same batteries. So anybody that has the consumer M3, your batteries will work in this drone. It's just that this drone also has a beacon on the top and takes accessories that the other Mavic, the regular Mavic 3 doesn't do, but it does take the same batteries.
And while we're on that topic, I'll also mention, we've been asked quite a bit about those batteries. Since we, with the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, what we saw was the self-heating edition batteries for the Enterprise drone. Now you can use, or you were able to use the standard Mavic 2 batteries for that Enterprise edition, although they had come out with the self-heating edition for, situations where it would be extremely cold. And you would need to have that self-heating function built in. Now, what we started to see, especially towards the end of life of that Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, was the fact that those batteries would swell more often than not. I remember I had one of my customers bring it to my attention of my batteries are swelling, and my immediate kind of reaction was you probably need to make sure you're maintaining them properly. And after it got brought up by multiple customers of, nope, we're maintaining them properly, we have only used these for a couple months now and they're already starting to swell, it was something that we saw specifically to those self-heating batteries. So we don't see a self-heating edition for the Mavic 3 Enterprise series. It does use those same batteries, They do have the enterprise battery kits, and we've been asked what makes them an enterprise battery kit, and it's mostly the fact that it has the 100-watt battery charger that comes included with that, so it does kind of optimize the shortest charging time to get those batteries back up in the air. But yep.
We went through the cameras a little bit, but one of the things that people have brought up, being very sharp-eyed, is that on the 4/3 camera on the M3E, it says DJI on the camera, and on the regular Mavic for the consumers, it says Hasselblad. And what the difference is that Hasselblad, part of what is in that camera is the Hasselblad's color engine on the plain consumer Mavic 3. And what that is Hasselblad's color engine is made to be very pleasant and to produce exceptional pictures, but it's not super accurate as far as color. And what they wanted on the M3E was to have the same size sensor, but because it would also be used for inspection and different things where the color is very critical, they did not include that Hasselblad color engine. So now it uses a DJI color engine that produces more accurate color. And then of course that 4/3 sensor, being a 1 1/3 inch sensor, it's going to give you a lot higher quality than the 1/2 inch sensor on the T. And the reason they could do that, of course, is because they don't have to put the thermal in there. And then the zooms are going to be the same. But the big difference is if you don't need the thermal, then the M3E would be the best one for mapping, surveying, and then also for doing inspections where you don't require thermal.
And then kind of jumping into these different cameras. So with that M3T camera, it is going to be the smaller of the two wide cameras with a 1/2 inch CMOS sensor, 48 megapixels. Now, as you probably have noticed, the bigger sensor of the Micro Four Thirds had effective pixels of 20, whereas this is 48. Now, how they're able to do that is what they first implemented with the Mavic Air 2 on the consumer side a couple of years ago was the quad Bayer sensor, where they kind of break each quad of the sensor up to be able to capture 12 megapixels within each quad, and then effectively giving you a 48 megapixel photo. Now, one thing to note about that is it does take a little bit longer to capture a 48 megapixel photo rather than if you just take a standard photo, which would be 12 megapixels. So the timed interval on the 48 megapixel shooting mode, I want to say that the shortest interval is around 3 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds, whereas when you shoot it in the standard mode, you can fire them either 1 or every 2 seconds for the timed interval. So just a little bit longer capture time when you do utilize the 48 megapixel mode. And then the focal length being 24 millimeter. This camera will only have so what we unlike the M3E, which has a mechanical shutter, now you can do the same style missions with this drone as you'd be able to do with the M3E. Since the M3E is for survey, mission style flying, you're still able to do that. And a lot of times when you are a police department or trying to do a crime scene reconstruction, crash scene reconstruction, if you have a dedicated team that does that all the time, then yeah, it might be worth it to look at the M3E. If you have a smaller team that might be just trying to get a system that's capable of doing search and rescue style operations with the thermal camera and doing survey mapping style operations where you don't need that level of resolution that you would get with the M3E, you're still able to do so with that wide camera on the M3T. And then that thermal camera, the thermal cameras you're going to see on essentially all of the current DJI line will be a 640 by 512 30 hertz thermal camera, and essentially the 30 hertz is your frame rate, so basically 30 frames per second on that. But from the Mavic 3 thermal to the M30T to the H20T, H20N, that's going to be the standard for the resolution, the 640 by 512. Now, with this being not a FLIR-based camera like what we saw on the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, this is going to be similar to what we see with the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, where it does have the thermal capabilities of running the photos through the DJI thermal analysis tool. So if you did need to analyze those photos post flying, then you'd be able to use that to import those two and extract the temperature data from each image that you put in. And then it's going to have the same similar features within the thermal camera, which is the spot meter area measurement. It also has the temperature alarm, where you'd be able to tap on any part of the screen to obtain temperature information on whatever it is you're tapping. If the area measurement is going to allow you to draw a box and give you the hottest, coldest points within that box, as well as the average temperature. So that way it kind of helps indicate, you know, what exactly is peaking and what's on the low side. Now it does have the different temperature measurement ranges depending on exactly what you're looking at. So if it's going to be the low mode, then you're going to or the high gain mode is going to have a kind of a smaller temperature range than when you have the low gain mode. And so this will just kind of depend on the range of temperatures that you're inspecting, or if you were doing a search and rescue style operation, then the high gain mode would definitely be the most beneficial for you. But the thermal camera, very similar to what we see with that M3E. And then this is kind of the big add-on that we didn't see with the M3E is the zoom camera. So before we had the wide in the thermal, but adding the zoom camera in really adds an extra level to the system, because now not only are you able to identify hotspots, but then get a closer eye on of what's exactly going on the ground without having to fly, you know, right up close to it. And so that camera is going to be the same for both the M3T and M3E, where it's going to be a 1/2-inch CMOS 12 megapixel photo. This is not capable of doing the 48 megapixel, as it does not have the quad layer built into that thermal or that zoom. The format equivalent for that focal length had 162 millimeters. So as I kind of mentioned before, that wide camera is going to be around 24, the zoom at 162. Now there is no optical zoom, so we call it a zoom camera, but it's really just a telephoto lens, and you're able to zoom between those two cameras and even further than what that telephoto was at. So the telephoto is essentially an 8 times zoom from the main camera, and then you can push that another 4 times or so up to the 56. So
and that's important because it gives you two cameras, so you're getting the highest quality at 2 different magnifications, and then everything in between and over the telephoto you start the electronic zoom, but at least you have two focal lengths that are the highest quality.
Yeah, and then we see the ISO range, electronic shutter speed on that, and then the format for those photos will be JPEG. Now getting micro four thirds wide camera, 20 megapixel, 24 millimeter, and then this is capable of doing the most of you will just use the mechanical shutter. Now if you did need to go beyond 1/2000 second shutter speed, it would then go into an electronic shutter. Don't think you would need to shoot it that fast in pretty much any situation, but that's essentially how that one's going to be set up and is capable of shooting the JPEG or RAW photos.
And then some of the accessories that have come out, one of the things they did that's different than the M3E is that on the M3E, if you decided you needed to fly at night and you had to put the strobe on top, then you couldn't put like a speaker or a spotlight. So now on the M3E and T, there's actually a strobe built into the back by the battery compartment. So you no longer have to add a strobe for night flying. And that allows them to put the speaker on that they've introduced, which is very compact and fits in the systems case. And then also the RTK module will fit in the systems case. And that, like Ryan said, will work with the DRTK2 base station. So that's the big difference in that RTK module over the M3E.
And we have not yet seen a spotlight for this system. I do not know if DJI has plans for it. But in terms of the speaker, how this will kind of work within the app is you have a couple options of how to play audio. You'll be able to speak right into the micro or into the controller, which has a built-in microphone, and you would be able to broadcast that through the speaker. The second way would be to actually go text to speech. So you'd be able to type in a message and you'd be able to select either male or female voice and have it play through the speaker just from the text you type in. Or the last method would be to import a audio file onto the remote controller. So if you plug the RC Pro enterprise controller into a computer and open it up like a hard drive, there is a folder called music within that folder where you'd be able to drop in any audio files, and then once you have the speaker attached, it'll allow you to access your internal storage to import a audio file to play. So we've had some fun with that, putting some different songs on, putting some police sirens on there. So it kind of makes it nice to be able to have preset messages or preset sounds ready to go, where the ones that you're going to be using on a consistent basis, you're not having to record every time you want to say it, and so on. And then so the DJI M3E series, it does use the DJI Pilot 2. DJI Pilot was the original app that we saw with the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual and Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced. They did kind of revamp it, and it is going to be the application that's used for essentially all the enterprise models right now. So the Matrice 300, M30T, and the M3T, M3E. And so this is going to have the mission planning built into it. It's going to have the cloud streaming services built into it. It also has your DJI Care, DJI Shield, and recommended maintenance on your home page, where you'd be able to see exactly if you're reaching a time where you would need to potentially send it in for a maintenance based on the amount of hours that it's been flying, as well as your countdown for the coverage for your DJI Shield. So I'm personally a big fan of the kind of revamped Pilot 2 app, and it just kind of makes it very streamlined across all their platforms. And then this is going to be the health management system that we see built into that Pilot 2 app. So this is going to be kind of a pre-flight check that you will access before taking off, and it's going to basically go through each of your systems to make sure everything's looking good. And if you were having an issue with firmware, if you were having an abnormality within any of these systems, propulsion, avionics, battery, whatever, then it's going to allow you to go into each of those tabs to resolve that issue and see exactly what it needs or why it's throwing that error. So having this kind of built in is really just nice to be able to fall back on. We get asked quite a bit, like, well, it doesn't seem like it's functioning right, and my immediate response is typically, well, check the health management system. The drone has a great way of self-diagnosing itself to see if there's any issues. And so
plus it has a real simple interface, so you just glance at it. As long as everything's green and the firmware says latest, you're ready to go.
Yep. And then getting into that DJI Pro Enterprise, the DJI RC Pro Enterprise. Now, this is only compatible with these two drones, so it looks identical to the RC Pro, which is compatible with the Mavic 3, Mavic Mini 3, or the Mini 3, and the Air 2S for the consumer edition. The Enterprise will only be compatible with the Enterprise drone. Now, DJI has said that they plan on adding this to be compatible with different systems down the road. Now, which systems, I'm not exactly sure, because of the fact that essentially the bigger two Enterprise systems have either the same or improved remotes from this. So I couldn't tell you exactly which ones it's going to be compatible with in the future, but that's what they're saying. So the new DJI 03 Enterprise transmission does give you a max range of 9.3 miles. As I try and emphasize with everyone, that you should not expect to fly 9.3 miles away, nor should you fly 9.3 miles away, since you wouldn't be able to see the drone. But what this really means is that within a highly populated area, dense area where you might have a lot of signals in the air, it's going to be able to hold that a lot better than previous models. So in most situations, 2 to 3 miles, no problem whatsoever. Again, that's still a little bit further than I would probably recommend flying, but just having that super strong connection is very convenient. Now, what we don't see with this model that we do see with some of the other DJI Enterprise models is the ability to do the multiple controllers. So this can only be operated with the single remote, where you would not be able to do the passover mode to someone down the road to resume operations. And that's not something I see getting added in. So if that was something of importance, you'd probably want to look into either the M30 or the M300 for that. But screen size, so the size of this is going to be very similar to what we see with the RC Pro and the original DJI Smart Controller. So 5.5 inches, you do have 64 gigabytes of internal storage, and then you are able to import files through the micro SD card. Now, one thing we get asked a lot is, does the SD card go in the remote or the drone? The SD card goes in the drone, but you can always put one in the remote to import flight plans. If you did want to upload sounds, audio that way, you could do it. So you would be able to put it on a micro SD card and put it into the remote. Or if you wanted to be able to do a screen recording or a screen capture onto an SD card from the remote, that's when you'd be able to do so. I always also say to just throw an extra SD card in your remote, so if you did fill up the one in the drone, you'd have a backup. But when you are recording photos or videos through the drone camera, it's going to the micro SD card in the drone. 1000 nit brightness on the display, and then it is a mini HDMI port rather than a full size like we saw with the last version. And then a big one here is the third-party app integration. So the SDK was released for this drone, where third-party apps such as DroneSense, such as Axon Air, such as Cape can be put onto this drone or this controller to do the mission flights through that. So I know a lot of people like to use Pix4D Capture or Drone Deploy to run those missions rather than the DJI Pilot 2, which was never available to do with the M3E in the past. That now is something that they've allowed people to integrate into their controllers.
And that's the way it is with all their enterprise drones now. They all have the third-party integration, all their enterprise ones.
And so this kind of is a good comparison with the different enterprise models that's out now. So we kind of see a good comparison between the flight times, the cameras. Some of them do have the rangefinders on them. And then the bottom part there, the FH2, that's going to be Flight Hub 2. So Flight Hub 2 is DJI's cloud-based streaming platform that you can connect. You'd be able to access live stream from the drone, from a computer, pretty much anywhere remotely. And this is the first Mavic series drone that is compatible with that Flight Hub 2, whereas the M3E was not. But you can kind of see how it stacks up in terms of the rest of the features on the drone compared to the rest of the options within the DJI Enterprise systems.
And all these specifications will be up on our YouTube page and up on our website.
So we now have a little bit of time for some Q&A if people did want to use the type bar here to submit any questions. I see one here. that says, do you know of any firmware updates to improve the camera video specs or add RAW only photos? Not at this time. You could do RAW photos with the M3E main camera, but in terms of to improve the video specs or improve the camera altogether with the firmware update, I
We haven't
don't
been
know of any
notified of
plans,
anything.
unfortunately. And it looks like we got another one. Does the M3 system need a manual calibration like the M2 did? By manual calibration, I'm assuming you mean the compass calibration. So where you have to pick it up, do a little dance with it, and allow it to get kind of oriented. Now, we don't see that too often with these newer systems. It's still something you're able to do within the compass calibration portion, but it's not something that we see being popped up and where it'll initialize and require you to do that to be able to get in the air. So I would say that, you know, we've seen that in the past where early on it doesn't require it as much, and later in life it starts to. And that's typically because the compass in the drone will start to go out and wear a little bit and just need to get that calibration more frequently. Since this is so new, I don't know if that'll be the same thing, but I don't think I have personally calibrated any of the
No, I haven't
compasses
seen
quite
any.
yet. Oh, this one now says the screen calibration where the PC is needed to calibrate the sensors. So to calibrate the sensors, yeah. So if you were calibrating the vision sensors, you will connect to the DJI Assistant 2 Enterprise Series, and you would go to the calibration tab. Now, that's something that is very far few between. I haven't seen one pop up quite yet for ours. Typically, I would say about every year or so is when we typically see, you know, please connect to the DJI Assistant 2 and calibrate the sensors.
We have another question?
And then in terms of pricing for these, so these systems are sold in 3 different combos each. So they all 3 combos have the same items in it, meaning aircraft, battery, remote, hard case, uh, propellers, charger, but then you have the option of doing either a 1-year shield plan, 2-year shield plan, or a plus shield plan. So the 1-year plan is going to get you 2 replacements for a 1-year coverage. You do pay the deductibles, which are a couple $100 for each deductible to get that replacement. The 2-year plan is going to give you 3 total replacements where you still do pay those same deductibles for each replacement. And then the plus plan is going to be a 1-year plan where you can get unlimited replacements and you do not pay any deductible on those replacements. So for the M3T, that 1-year plan with the system starts at $5,498. 2-year plan $5,748. Plus plan $5,998. And then for the E, the 1-year plan starts at $3,628. 2-year plan at $3,788, and then the plus plan at $3,958.
And some of those plans also cover the flyaways.
Correct. Yeah. You would need to bind, well, you would need to, for flyaway, it's a little bit different where you would need to actually have the flight log to be able to send to DJI to see if it qualifies for a flyaway. And then we've got another question here about the RTK module. I want to say the RTK module is 620. Here, let me double check.
Oh, it's about almost $800.
Is it 800?
Yep.
Yeah,
790.
I think it's.
Nope, we're not prepared.
Let's see. Yeah, so the both of those modules, the speaker and RTK module, do not come included. They have with the previous version, you got the spotlight speaker and anti-collision light. With the system, that's not going to be the case. So yeah, it is 709 for the RTK module.
159 for the speaker.
And that would be compatible, like if you have an existing base station from a Matrice 300 or even a 200 or even the Phantom 4 RTK, that DRTK2 base station, it would likely just need to be updated, but you would be able to utilize that same base station with this if you already had one. The base station goes for 3,600. So I have a question here about, do these record video? They both will record video, 4K video for each, and that's going to be on both the wide and zoom camera, and then 30 frames per second for the thermal. Correct. Monthly pay plan. So we do work with some financing companies where we could set you up with a pay-as-you-go plan. So absolutely,
lease.
if you want to reach out to us, we can help set that up for you, no problem. Yeah, any more questions out there? Cool. Well, that's going to wrap it here. If you guys do have additional questions, our emails are listed down there at the bottom left, so please reach out.
And please be sure and check out our YouTube channel. We have many more videos and webinars up there.
And we did just move locations. I know some of you are familiar, but if you guys do want to come check out our new location, it is over here off of I-25 in Evans. So 2130 South Bel Air Street is going to be our new address, and we'd love for you to come check it out. We are no longer in a no-fly zone, so it is very easy for us to give you test flights and demo flights these days. And if you wanted to set something like that up, please let us know. I got one final question here asking about availability. Right now, we are waiting to get more in stock. We should have them I would say within the next week or so. We do plan on having these readily available shortly, soon. So it's just kind of this initial release that we tried to get as many as we could, and we were only allocated so many. But once things kind of calm down here in the next few weeks, they should be readily available, no problem.
Well, great. Well, we appreciate you taking your time.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.